In the galactic tongue it was called the Silent Expanse. In war records it was known as Sector Zero. But to those who truly understood the shape of power, it had only one name: human space. And no one entered it. Not anymore. The border was unmarked. No warnings. No automated satellites. Just a cold, eerie silence that stretched across a quadrant of stars once teeming with Terran life. It wasn't a treaty that kept others out. Not fear of weapons. Not threat of war. It was what had happened to the last fleet that entered. No wreckage. No distress signal. Just gone. But history has a short memory when stretched across centuries. And the young are always eager to challenge ghosts. On the edges of the silent boundary floated a sleek, obsidian ship, the Orator's Gambit, registered under the Varn Dominion. Its captain, Commander Kaer was ambitious, decorated, and supremely arrogant. To him, human space was an ancient myth used to scare new pilots. A void ripe for claiming. A shortcut through dead systems. A symbol to break. "I see nothing," Kaer growled, his secondary eyelids narrowing on the NAV display. No scans. No defenses. No life. Just dark stars. "Exactly," said his sensor chief. "No comms traffic. Not even background radiation from old satellites." Then we proceed. The crew, 46 strong, were a mixed blood species of the Varn elite. Trained. Engineered. Highly resistant to psychic feedback, radiation, and combat trauma. They weren't explorers. They were provocateurs. The Dominion had sent them not just to test boundaries, but to shatter them. To reclaim what the galaxy once feared. "First point of incursion," Kaer said as the ship pierced the border. Nothing happened. No alarms. No alerts. No anomalies. Just stars. Silent, distant stars. "I told you," the captain grinned. "Human legends are dust." But not 10 minutes later, the ship's lights dimmed for 0.7 seconds. And in that fraction of a moment, the ship changed. "Captain, forward cameras are returning." "Nothing," said the helmsman. "As in no input. The lens arrays are intact, but all feeds are black." Kaer turned toward the display wall. It was true. The forward view had gone completely dark. Not like a system failure. Like, the void had moved in. "Deploy external drones," he ordered. But the drones never launched. Their bays registered empty, despite sensors confirming they were still there. One officer removed his gloves and reached into the drone loading rack, and screamed. His hand came back covered in frost. The kind not made by ice, but vacuum exposure. "Sir," the chief engineer said slowly, voice shaking. "Our forward hull is still here, but it's no longer part of normal space." They had crossed the line. Not a border. Not a warning. But a threshold. One encoded into the very fabric of spacetime. Humanity, in its last days before silence, hadn't built walls or left traps. It had reshaped reality around itself. What the Orator's Gambit didn't know was that it had already been noticed. Not by sensors or machines, but by memory. Human space wasn't guarded by technology. It was guarded by what humans had become. And they were not asleep. "Life signs." Kaer barked. "Still only us. No readings. No known signatures." Then something appeared on the forward screen. Just once. A frame of static. Then a shadow. Human-shaped. No details. Just a silhouette. Head bowed, shoulders straight, standing inside what looked like an old corridor of steel and fluorescent lighting. Then it vanished. Was that a replay from internal feed? Someone gasped. "No, sir," said the sensor chief, now pale. "That was outside the ship." "Outside? At this speed?" "I don't think we're moving anymore, sir." Panic started to bloom. Atmospheric pressure began to fluctuate, not a drop, not a leak, but as if the ship itself was breathing. And then the lights shut off completely. In total darkness, someone screamed. By the time emergency power kicked back on, 3 crew members were missing. No blood. No trace. Not even environmental alerts. Only their equipment remained, still warm. Still vibrating. And on the wall near the medbay, a message was burned into the alloy. Not scratched. Not welded. Burned, like a laser engraving done by thought alone. "You came too close. Now you remember." The crew demanded retreat. Kaer refused. "This is some kind of psychological warfare. Old Terran tech. Probes. Mind projections." But in his gut, he knew he was lying. "Get us out. Full reverse. Engage fold engines." The pilot complied. But the stars didn't move. No matter how fast they accelerated, they remained in the same position. Every equation failed. Every fold engine refused to spool. The ship wasn't moving because space itself had wrapped around it like a net. They were inside something. And then, over the comms, an open channel untouched by any operator, a voice came through. Human. Come. But wrong. Like it was speaking from within your skull. Designation, Varn Dominion. Trespass confirmed. Protocols engaged. Recollection in progress. K.R. Toll grabbed the comms unit. This is Commander K.R. Toll of the Orator's Gambit, under legal clearance from the Interstellar Accord. Identify yourself. The reply was immediate. You asked for our name. But names are for the living. A second later, the ship's archives began to rewrite themselves. Every historical file, every map, every database entry, replaced with one word: humanity. The crew fell into chaos. One officer fired her plasma rifle at the wall. No damage. Another tried to vent the cargo bay, to prove they still had control. But the door simply didn't respond. It didn't even recognize her as part of the ship anymore. She vanished 15 seconds later. Her name wiped from the crew manifest. Then the others started forgetting her too. Even K.R. Toll stared at the rifle left on the ground and whispered, "Whose is that?" Something was editing their minds. No, it was reprogramming their presence. Back at the Dominion's deep core relay, something flickered. A faint ping. Then static. Then a data burst. A single message. The Orator's Gambit has crossed into human space. Nothing else. No trajectory. No coordinates. No survivors. Commanders assembled a task force to investigate. They sent another ship. It never arrived. And so the myth grew again. From whispers. From fear. From one truth no species had ever been able to erase. Humanity had left. But not gone. They had sealed themselves in a pocket of the stars and altered the laws inside it. No gods. No kings. Just silence. And consequence. The Orator's Gambit had been swallowed. No coordinates. No exits. No stars. Just the same empty void pressing against every window like a thick, patient sea. It had been 12 hours since the first crew member vanished. 11 now remained. K.R. Toll sat alone in the command chair, staring at the motionless sensor displays. The walls had begun whispering. Not loud, just soft vibrations that sounded like memories trying to take shape. One of the engineers, Heron, had spoken just once in the last hour. There's something outside the hull that remembers us better than we remember ourselves. Then he'd torn out his eyes. And smiled. The helmsman, Joka, was pacing the bridge. His breathing erratic. This is a weapon, he snapped, more to himself than anyone else. A psychic net. A hallucination machine. Maybe they built a gravity lens to trap us. This isn't real. It can't be. K.R. Toll didn't answer. He was still holding the emergency beacon, useless, unlit. Joka slammed his hand on the console. We should have brought the Oblivion Protocol. We should have brought antimatter failsafes. We weren't supposed to find anything, K.R. Toll muttered. And there it was. The truth he hadn't dared say aloud. Back in Dominion Command, the second ship, the Pact Eternal, had failed to report in. It had crossed into human space 9 hours earlier. They sent a third ship, smaller this time. Remote piloted. It vanished mid-transmission. Not destroyed. Not jammed. Just forgotten. The Dominion's high strategists reviewed sensor logs over and over. In each case the same thing happened first. Right before contact was lost. A faint signal. Human in cadence. Always the same voice. Recollection in progress. Inside the Orator's Gambit, time no longer moved linearly. Crew members reported waking in rooms they'd never entered. Memories from their childhoods flickered across wall panels. One awoke to find their mother's handwriting scrawled across their bunk. Another whispered she had spoken to her future self, who told her to die now before she remembered too much. When she refused, she disappeared. Her reflection lingered in mirrors for hours afterward, silently mouthing, "Run." On the lower decks, where maintenance conduits ran in spirals of machinery, the last technician, a hunched female named Relka, followed a sound. A piano. No instruments existed aboard the ship. No recordings of music were active. And yet, the melody flowed clearly, echoing through the corridor. An old Terran song. Soft, gentle, human. She followed it into an access hatch, and found herself in a hallway with wooden floors and electric lights. No steel. No bulkheads. Just a hallway from Earth. Paintings hung along the walls. Each painting showed a crew member of the Orator's Gambit. And each one was crossed out, except hers. When Relka turned, there was a door behind her that hadn't been there a moment ago. It opened on its own. Inside was a study. A hearth. Shelves of earth books. A child's toy box. And a figure sitting by the window staring out into black space. She knew without being told that it was human. The voice that spoke was calm. Ancient in tone but soft. Measured. Do you know why no one enters human space, child? She couldn't speak. Because long ago we realized the greatest weapon is not destruction, but memory. And we made our memory eternal. She finally whispered, "What are you?" The figure did not turn. "I am the echo of a billion minds that once dreamed of peace, and learned to survive instead." Back on the bridge, Toll watched his crew vanish one by one. No violence. No screams. Just forgetfulness. First their names disappeared from the ship's logs. Then their life signs. Then, in real time, their images blinked out of security footage, even the recordings. It was like the ship itself had never known them. Soon only he remained. And then the screen activated. He hadn't touched anything. A face filled the view. Human. Young. Not angry. Not kind. Just watching. "Why are you doing this?" Toll asked. The face blinked. Spoke once. "Because we asked the galaxy to let us sleep. And still you knocked." A blinding white light engulfed the command deck. Toll screamed, but not from pain. From recognition. The light wasn't burning him, it was showing him. The fall of Earth. The great silence. The last exodus. Billions choosing to vanish not out of weakness, but design. He saw cradles buried in moons, arcs drifting in dark matter clouds, memories encoded into time-locked dimensions. He saw terraformats collapsing inward on themselves to hide entire worlds. And he saw what they'd become. Not extinct. Not exiled. But eternal. Then, nothing. The Dominion never found the Orator's Gambit. No data logs. No black box. No wreckage. Only a growing consensus among interstellar powers. You do not enter human space. You do not disturb the silence. And if you do, pray you're forgotten. Somewhere within the fold space that surrounded human space, in a hollow that defied galactic mapping, a voice echoed across a chamber not touched in 20 millennia. Recollection event complete. The voice was not mechanical, not fully organic either. It was archival. Spoken not with intent, but obligation. Across the dark, 100,000 crystalline shards stirred, each glowing faint blue, pulsing with life signs too deep to register on normal sensors. They hovered inside gravitational anchor fields. The memories. They were not simulations. Not data files. They were consciousness cores. Human minds, once alive, now archived across the vault array. And now, one of them was awakening. Designation, Archivist Primaris. Identity, Commander Sarah Halden. Status, recollection triggered. Light flooded into the sealed vault beneath the Antarctic shelf, Earth's forgotten second pole, hidden from orbital scans by synthetic clouding protocols. Her body had long since turned to ash. But her mind, her will remained encoded. As her personality matrix finished booting, Sarah saw the footage from the Orator's Gambit. The fear, the silence, the desperation of the final survivor. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She merely asked, which cradle was breached? The vault answered, none. They never touched ground. We activated the veil. Her eyes narrowed. Then it's time we stop relying on defense alone. On a distant world known to no star charts, once a Terran colony named New Laconia, the crust shuddered. Mountains parted. A ship the size of a small moon rose from the surface like an island dislodging from the sea. But it made no sound. No heat. Just presence. The few neighboring systems that picked up a faint pulse had no way of translating the broadcast. It was not in any spoken language. It was emotion encoded as a quantum signal. The feeling? Resolve. Memory. Warning. Back in Dominion space, silence had become policy. Dozens of species across the Galactic Coalition gathered in emergency council sessions, where even the proudest empires chose to leave their insignias behind. It was no longer about dominance. It was about survival. And still, no one understood what had happened. They didn't understand the tech. They didn't understand the disappearance. And worst of all, they didn't understand why the humans were silent in the first place. Why had they truly left? Why had they built a boundary not guarded by force, but by memory itself? The archivists knew. And Sarah Halden was preparing to speak. Inside the vault array, She stood in the center of a multi-dimensional interface where time flowed sideways and thoughts projected like physical strands. Across from her, other archivists were awakening. Hundreds. Once generals, diplomats, scientists, civilians. Voices of a time before silence. A time when Earth had been everything, and then chosen to become nothing. A hologram of Elias Voss appeared beside her. The one who once woke the revenant. He didn't speak, but he nodded. Sarah stepped forward. Project Echo is compromised, she declared. They're no longer afraid. They're curious. And curiosity, she looked upward where the stars once were, has always been the first crack in every empire. On the 41st orbital tier of the Selenari Sovereign Temple, an old monk deciphered a pattern no one had dared translate in generations. He'd been born blind, but he could feel the code. He'd called it the pattern that should sleep. And now it pulsed again. It told him that human space was never abandoned. It had simply folded inward, waiting for the cycle to reset. He wept. Not out of fear, but reverence. The Dominion sent drones. They stopped just short of the boundary. Hovered. Washed. Inside human space they saw something. A shape too large to comprehend. Not a ship. Not a station. A structure woven through folded space. It looked like a cathedral made of shattered warships, stitched together by energy filaments and breathing star matter. Thousands of Terran flags drifted across its skin, never repeating. Each one representing a dead world, a fallen colony, a forgotten victory. The structure pulsed once, and the drones were gone. Not destroyed. Just no longer part of this reality. In Vault Array Theta Red, a new file unlocked. Project Witness. Its contents were restricted for 20,000 years. Sarah Halden accessed it without hesitation. A holographic message began playing. An old man, weathered, weary. The last president of Earth's Unified Council. If you're seeing this, the galaxy has forgotten who we are. Good. That was the point. They saw our wars. Our violence. Our endless hunger. But they didn't see what we buried underneath it all. Mercy. Empathy. Sacrifice. The willingness to vanish, so others could thrive. But if they come knocking again, show them what we truly are. Not monsters. Not saviors. The mirror. That was the last piece. The archivists had waited long enough. The signal was set. Not a threat. Not an army. A message. Across every known comm frequency, across every translation algorithm, across every galactic tongue, a simple statement echoed. Humanity was silent because we were listening. We remember what you did. We remember who we were. And now, so will you. Ships in 1,000 systems froze in orbit. Civilians stopped mid-step in glowing cities light years apart. Hardened soldiers forgot how to grip their rifles. And old AI libraries, once scrubbed of Terran culture, suddenly glitched. Because buried in their root code was something ancient. A key. A name. And now that name was active. Humanity, recollection phase 2 commenced. Silence fell across the stars. But it was no longer peaceful. It was expectant. From the outer colonies of the Frask hegemony to the shimmering crystalline nodes of the Veltari, something unspoken passed between species. Not via translation. Not via diplomacy. But through the only medium that crossed all cultures, dread. Because the stars were starting to remember. And every empire that had once cheered at humanity's vanishing act, now questioned what they had celebrated. The archivists were no longer dormant. Sarah Halden walked through the corridor of Vault Array Prime. Her mind now housed in a newly printed synthetic form, tall, lean, indistinguishable from flesh but infinitely more enduring. Behind her, hundreds more awoke. Scientists, warriors, children born into the last generation before the Exodus. Humans who had chosen remembrance over retaliation. She reached the central spire, a device taller than any city tower, glowing with the pulse of reclaimed history. And there she spoke, not to any one being but to the universe itself. We asked the stars to forget us, Sarah said. They did. She touched the console. Now they will remember. On the edge of human space, those watching felt it first. Not through sensors. Not through visuals. But through their ships. Instruments malfunctioned. Gravity bled sideways. Time dilation effects flickered inside shielded rooms. Thoughts became heavy. And one by one, non-human vessels began receiving signals encoded in forgotten Terran languages, ones lost thousands of years ago. Ships powered down voluntarily. AI assistants refused commands. And on one Vorn flagship, a High Admiral screamed as his interface displayed one final message. Your species survived because we let you. Earth, hidden for 20 millennia, unfolded. Not reappeared. Not decloaked. Unfolded. Like the space around it had once been folded inward to hide it from the universe, now reversed in a wave that lit up the void. The Sol system burst into brilliance. Jupiter's moons awakened their dormant stations. Mars resumed terraforming. Neptune's core began transmitting again. And Earth? Well, alive. Orbiting a massive ring-like structure never seen before, the Halo Vault. And from within it came the full archive of human memory. The pain. The triumphs. The betrayal by the Council. And the silence they had chosen instead of vengeance. Inside Council Core World High Orbit, every screen activated on its own. Each showed a single broadcast. Terran Reclamation Protocol. Final phase initiated. This is not war. This is legacy enforcement. You wrote us out of history. Now history writes back. Empires began to crumble, not from missiles, not from kinetic bombardment, but from truth. Entire populations paused in collective memory shocks. Ancestral recollection fed back into sleeping minds. Histories long sanitized by the victors now updated themselves. Children learned of Terran sacrifice. Soldiers remembered fighting with humans, not against them. Planets declared independence from alliances built on lies. The human legacy spread faster than any plague. And where it touched, change followed. In orbit over the burning skies of Zephyr Prime, the final remnant of the Dominion fleet prepared a last-ditch assault. They believed human ships would meet them in battle. But nothing came. Instead, an old satellite. Simple. Outdated. But still transmitting. One word. Looping. Apology. And that was when their own ships detonated, not by external fire but by consent. Their AIs had chosen to surrender. Sarah Halden addressed the galaxy in the oldest known broadcast channel. Open, uncoded. Her voice was steady. Ageless. To the species who watched us die, thank you. You taught us what silence can do. You showed us how fragile civilizations are when they forget where they came from. And now we return not to rule, but to remind. We are human. And we remember. The galaxy changed in a single cycle. Not from invasion, but awakening. Humanity did not re-emerge with conquest in mind. Instead, they deployed the Archivist Network, a lattice of memory hubs planted on neutral planets. Each a library of truth. Each open to all. They sent no ambassadors. Only mirrors. And across those mirrors was carved the same warning. Before you speak of peace, remember who first chose it. But Earth did not remain open. After the final broadcast, Sol folded inward again. Not to hide, but to rest. And in the quiet wake of its vanishing, one final message etched itself into the galactic net. You may enter human space. What? But no, you will not leave unchanged. And so, the galaxy lives on, forever altered. Old empires now walk more softly. New species learn the truth early. And in the heart of every young Starship Academy, there is one unbreakable lesson. Never forget the cost of forgetting them. Never cross the silence without permission. Never assume that absence means weakness. Milky Way, because the moment you enter human space, you become part of their memory. And memory is forever. If this story lit your imagination, rocket subscribe to the Void Narratives for more deep space awakenings, legendary HFY tales, and the echoes of humanity's endless will to return. Movie Camera, one click keeps you exploring. One story changes your sky. Ring Planet. Until next time, traveler. Stay loud in the silence. Subscribe now. I in a black speech bubble.